Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Welcome as we gather on this second Sunday in June the 12th, in a month that celebrates Indigenous peoples' history, in a month that celebrates the gift of pride in who we are, in the freedom to be who we are. As we come to the midpoint in the year and we make our way towards the longest day of light, we come together in person and we come together online as one community. We come to sing and to pray, to share wisdom old and new, to seek with each other what it is we need to live as creative and loving beings in this large and small moment in time. We come to remind ourselves of the miracles of persistence. We come to discover that, like a child learning the alphabet, if we don't give up, impossible things can happen. Or like Anglophones learning to speak our country's other official language, if we don't give up, impossible things can happen. Or like a toddler taking those first few steps, if we don't give up, impossible things can happen. Or like an athlete in training, if we don't give up, impossible things can happen. Just like bulbs planted in autumn, if they don't give up, impossible things can happen. Wherever you are, whoever you are, whoever you love, however you identify yourself, whatever you celebrate, whatever you grieve in this day, we are with each other in the power of a persisting community. We come to this time to acknowledge and give our consideration to the storied land on which we live. Some of us online live on unceded lands, and others of you live in treaty lands other than this Treaty 6 land. All of us together, we pause to recognize the wisdom, the spirituality, the culture, the traditions, the languages, the medicines, the Indigenous knowledge to which we are all indebted. And we also lament the wounded history that failed to acknowledge the creativity and the light in our Indigenous brothers and sisters. On whatever land we place our feet this day, let us do it with an act of gratitude and of repentance and of reconciliation as we walk toward a more hopeful and healing future with each other. All of us, Indigenous, immigrants, refugees, all of us who call this place home. So we sing the dream of the enslaved, the captive, those with every reason to dream of a better day, in the company of so many African Americans and all freedom seekers. We sing the world of our hopes and dreams.
There'll be
Whenever we gather, we light a candle in the community. And we invite those of you joining us at home to light a candle where you are. A candle that gives us a light that connects us to the long cosmic light of our journey. A journey that brought us here for our brief time to shine. A light that connects us to the primal myth. A poem that celebrates our Genesis as emerging from light, as the Creator begins the creation, inviting light to be. After light emerges in plants and animals, light comes in the shape of the human. And when we fail to see each other as beings of light, we perpetrate darkness on one another, diminishment, denigration, denial, indignity. But when we honor the light in one another, there's no telling what is yet possible, what we might create together. So in this time, we consider with each other what it is to persist in being creatures of light as we live in the light we're given. And we do take this time as a collective spiritual community to strengthen our intentions, offering words together that come in a rephrasing of a prayer Jesus taught his friends to pray. And so we offer these words with one another in contemporary images and language of our day, patterned on the prayer of Jesus. We open to the sacredness at the heart of all, called by many names. We open to deep mystery we trust to be love. May we be faithful to the vision of building a beloved community on earth. May there be daily bread to nourish all hunger, forgiveness for the harm we've done, and the capacity to forgive those who have hurt us. May we not feel abandoned in hard times, but find the strength to meet each moment with the courage to walk in the light of deep gratitude. For the light of love is with us now and forever. Amen. We want to share a time that's for all of us, but invite the younger and smaller of us to make our way here to the front together. And we're going to share a story that's called, "What do you do with a problem?" That's kind of an experience we've all had, where somehow something is just a very big problem in our lives. And we try to figure out how to make it better. And sometimes it just gets bigger and bigger. Well, here's a little story by Yobi Yamada and some wonderful illustrations by May Besem. What do you do with a problem? I don't know how it happened, but one day I had a problem. I didn't want it. I didn't ask for it. I didn't like having a problem, but it was there. Why is it here? What does it want? What do you do with a problem, I thought. I wanted to make it go away. So I shooed it, and I scowled at it, and I tried ignoring it, but nothing worked. I started to worry about my problem. What if it swallows me up? What if my problem sneaks up and gets me? What if it takes away all of my things? I worried a lot. I worried about what would happen. I worried about what could happen. I worried about this, and I worried about that. And the more I worried, the bigger my problem became. I wished it would just disappear. I tried everything I could to hide from it. I even found a way to disguise myself, but it still found me. And the more I avoided my problem, the more I saw it everywhere. I thought about it all the time. I didn't feel good at all. I couldn't take it anymore. This has to stop, I declared. Maybe I was making my problem bigger and scarier than it actually was. After all, my problem hadn't really swallowed me up or attacked me. I realized that I just had to face it. So, even though I didn't want to, even though I was really afraid, I got ready and I tackled my problem. And when I got face to face with it, I discovered something. My problem wasn't what I thought it was. I discovered it had something beautiful inside. My problem held an opportunity. It was an opportunity for me to learn and to grow, to be brave, and to do something. It showed me that it was important to look closely because some opportunities only come once. So now, I see problems differently. I'm not afraid of them anymore because I know their secret. Every problem has an opportunity for something good. You just have to look for it. I think we've got some really good advice in this story. Sometimes it feels like problems are the thing that keeps pestering us. But really, we have the opportunity to look hard and deep into them and to find something that we didn't see at first. We just have to keep at it. So, today is our last opportunity for Kids Spirit. Take a pause for the summer and we'll be back together in September. So we're really glad you're all here and you're going to have a wonderful time with Daisy. and with Ariane, and we will see you after your program. So have a wonderful morning. We're going to sing as you make your way.
Good morning. Thank you. This story is not a story, as in a fiction. It's a true account of an ordinary woman, Mary Walker, who achieved an extraordinary feat. Her story inspires us to believe and behave in the truth that if we want it bad enough, we're never too old to, well, why don't you fill in your own blank? Whenever Mary Walker was tired, she would shield her eyes from the blistering sun and watch swallow-tailed kites dip and soar above the trees.
At 8 years of age, Mary believed that what it would be like to be free. Oh, how she dreamed to be free as a bird.
But Mary didn't watch or dream for long. She already knew from brutal experience the first rule of Major Robert Stanfield Hardaway.
Keep working.
Major Hardaway was an iron-fisted third-generation owner of the cotton plantation where Mary, her family, and more than 100 other slaves labored without personal gain. Living in ever-present fear of unimaginable punishments, many died as mere notes in the master's ledger.
With no freedom or legal rights, slaves were chattel, a piece of property, and a cheap source of back and spirit-breaking labor that could be bred, bought, exploited, degraded, broken, violated, sold, and even deprived of life.
Like animals.
Fearing that black literacy would threaten the slave system, Major Hardaway executed the law prohibiting slaves from learning to read or write with a feral vengeance.
So Mary didn't learn to read, and she learned not to get caught dreaming when the overseer was around to carry out the master's orders with impunity.
Her days were long, consumed sunup to sundown in the fields, weeding and picking cotton, hauling drinking water, feeding livestock, or helping her mama clean the master's house or repair the mistress's clothes.
Only at the end of a workday or on the Sabbath could she lie in her little bed next to a crumbling fireplace and think about those birds and they yearned for freedom that they represented to her.
When she was free, if she ever was free, Mary vowed she'd go anywhere she wanted, rest when she needed to. She'd dream about anything, anytime she felt like it, and learn to read and go through 1,000 other doors her young mind couldn't even imagine freedom would open to her.
When she was 15, it happened.
On September 22nd, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln issued a proclamation decreeing enslaved persons were to be forever freed. It obliged government, military, and naval authorities to recognize and maintain this freedom.
Only it wasn't quite that simple.
Lincoln didn't actually free all of the more than 4 million slaves when he signed the formal Emancipation Proclamation the following January. That document only applied to states shown here in red that had already seceded from the United States, or the Union as it was called. This left slavery to continue unabated in the border states, shown here in the blue.
You know, traditionally remembered as a triumph for human equality, that's really not how Lincoln sold the proclamation to his contemporaries. Rather, he promoted it as a way of depriving the Confederacy, the Reds, of much-needed cheap labor and forced them to return to the Union.
It took 2 more years until slavery and involuntary servitude were fully abolished with the passage of the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution.
On January 1st, 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation set free 15-year-old Mary and her family. What the proclamation didn't say was how people with nothing except the clothes on their backs could find shelter, food, and a living wage. Mary's father had already died, so her family was on their own, taking the so-called Freedom Road, which, now that they were free, meant any road.
Across fields and through woods, freed slaves surged like waves crashing hard to shore. Many headed north and west.
For others, the fear of not finding a welcoming place to live and work made them decide to stay and work for their former owners, either on plantations or as sharecroppers.
Mary's family chose to stay in the South.
An organization called the Freedmen's Bureau helped them find shelter on abandoned Confederate land, and they settled into a one-room cabin.
For the next few years, Mary worked alongside her mama to help feed her young siblings. 7 days a week, she churned butter, cleaned houses, and cared for other folks' children.
Freed from slavery, but not servitude. Mary's hours were long, leaving no time for anything else. If she was thirsty or hungry or needed to relieve herself, she had to wait until she got home.
At week's end, she would hand over the single quarter she'd earned for that week.
That quarter didn't buy much freedom. Potatoes were 40 cents a bushel. Eggs were 20 cents a dozen. Rice was 6 cents a pound. Sugar, 8 cents a pound. Butter, 16 cents.
With coffee beans costing $1.20 a pound, spending any time learning to read was a freedom from work Mary simply couldn't afford.
At age 20, Mary met a group of evangelists on the roadside. A woman with soft wrinkles in her kindly face placed a Bible in Mary's hands. The evangelist told Mary her civil rights were in its pages.
Mary didn't know what civil rights were.
She only knew that top to bottom, from front to back, that beautiful book, the first book she could call her own, was filled with words she couldn't read. Then and there, she renewed her vow to learn every one of them one day.
But not today. Today there was work to be done and money to be earned.
The freedom to read and the freedom that comes from reading would still have to wait.
Soon married, Mary and her husband eked out a pitiful living as sharecroppers, renting someone else's house, using someone else's tools, and planting someone else's seed in land that they would never own.
After harvesting the season's crops, almost all their earnings went toward housing, tools, and seed costs.
When her first child was born, Mary asked a friend to record her son's birth date in her Bible. She dipped a pen into an inkwell and made a mark beside her friend's writing.
After Mary's husband died, she remarried and had 2 more sons. Their names and birth dates were recorded in her Bible by someone else, and she marked her X each time, knowing this was an important record of her family history, even if she herself could not read it.
For the next 4 decades, Mary sharecropped and did odd jobs to support her family. Sometimes a maid, sometimes a nanny, sometimes a cook or seamstress, even a blacksmith. Mary's time was never her own, and her now decades-long desire to learn to read remained out of reach.
Seeking a better life, 69-year-old Mary moved to Chattanooga, Tennessee, a young, thriving city, despite the devastation of massive flooding in 1867 and 1886.
When what came to be known as the Great Flood of 1917 occurred, Mary's illiteracy kept her from following the story in the newspapers and reading the signs she encountered, traveling back and forth to work.
Cleaning, babysitting, cooking for others earned her a meager but sufficient living. With what little time was left over, she raised money for her church by frying fish, baking cakes, sewing, and selling sandwiches.
Her faith and her church were very important to her. On Sundays, she would clutch her beloved family Bible while the preacher exhorted her to read the Bible, pray every day.
Oh, how she prayed that she could learn to read her Bible every day.
Eventually, Mary was able to stop working. She moved into a modest retirement home where she could stand at her window and gaze down at the world below.
There were squiggles everywhere on billboards and signs, trolleys and delivery trucks, storefronts and buildings. She wanted to be able to read them so badly, but
Was she too old to learn? And who could be bothered to teach someone her age how to read now that she finally had time to learn?
in 1963, at 114 years of age, Mary had outlived her entire family.
That year, she heard about a reading class in her building 2 nights a week.
Mary pursed her lips. Now that she had nothing but time to learn to read, it was time. No more waiting.
She walked out of her apartment, into an elevator, and down to the lobby. There, she saw a group of people sitting under a sign with a picture of an open book. A neighbor asked if she needed help getting over to the class.
Mary shook her head, gripped her cane, lifted her chin, and walked straight towards that sign. She didn't know if someone her age could learn to read, but by God, she was going to try.
And try she did. For the next 2 years, Mary put everything she had into learning to read. First, she studied the alphabet until her eyes watered. She memorized the sound each letter made and practiced printing and then writing her name so much that her fingers cramped.
She learned to recognize sight words and then challenged herself to make short sentences with them.
She studied until books and pages and sentences and words and letters swirled around in her head while she slept. Every day she got better and faster and more confident and more daring.
It had been a long, long, long road, her freedom road, with so many barriers, so many dead ends, lane closures, potholes, so many speed bumps, roadblocks. So many roads had been closed to Mary Walker, but at age 116, she made it.
In 1964, Mary's teacher and friend, Helen Kelly, presented her with a graduation certificate declaring she could read. Mary stood in front of her class and read aloud the book she had longed to read for so long.
Yay! Hooray for Mary!
Mary's Bible had waited 101 years for her to learn to read it. And now she could open its tissue-thin pages and marvel at its words, its chapters, and its verses, its familiar stories. Her satisfaction at being able to read it herself was beyond measure. You might say it was beyond words.
News of Mary's almost unfathomable accomplishment spread, and people from all walks of life came to congratulate her. Chattanooga's mayor came and presented her with a key to the city. Journalists came to interview her and take her picture. Gifts appeared from total strangers: furniture, paintings, books, a new Bible. She sniffed at that. Even perfume and champagne from Canada's Mounties, of all things.
And the cherry on top, a representative of the United States Department of Health, Education, and Welfare came and officially certified Mary Walker to be her country's oldest student.
There were no words to describe the depth of Mary's joy. Well, she still missed her family, of course, but whenever she felt especially lonely, she would read from her Bible or look out her window and read with deep satisfaction all the words in the street below. Each birthday party ended with Mary reading her old Bible aloud to her friends, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and great-great-grandchildren.
And in the final year of life, a plane ride, her first ever, right over her building so she could wave to her friends.
As the plane dipped and soared, those swallow-tailed birds, the kites, she had set her dreams by when she was 8.
121-year-old Mary Walker thought flying was a lot like reading. They both make a body feel as free as a bird.
See, you're never too old to learn.
I hope that's how you feel too.
It's easy to give up. It's easy to give in. It's easy to give over. It's really nothing short of a miracle to persist. And Mary Walker was one of those who persisted against all odds. We have another story, an old story of persistence that comes out of the Jewish Christian tradition. A story that's set sometime after the death of Jesus, when the authorities are trying to silence those who would continue his vision and perpetuate his teachings. Some were murdered, some were imprisoned, some were in hiding. And someone with a great sense of humor, a good imagination, and a flair for drama created this story that gives us a sense of those most dangerous and difficult times when that fledgling reform movement within Judaism that would become known as Christianity was just emerging. Here's that story that comes from the book of Acts in the 12th chapter. King Herod was about to bring Peter out for the kill. That night, even though he was shackled to two soldiers, one on either side, Peter slept like a baby. And there were guards at the door keeping their eye on the place because Herod was taking no chances. When suddenly there was a stranger at Peter's side and light flooding the room, and the stranger shook Peter and got him up, and he said, "Hurry!" And the handcuffs fell off his wrists, and the stranger said, "Get dressed, put on your shoes." And Peter did. And the stranger said, "Grab your coat, let's get out of here." And Peter followed him. He thought he was dreaming. Past the first guard and then the second, they came to the iron gate that swung out before them, and Peter was out on the street, free as the breeze. And then the stranger left him, and he was on his own, and he realized it was no dream. We'd think that the prison break was nothing short of a miracle. But really, the remarkable part of the story, the miraculous part of the story, comes next. As soon as Peter realized, he went to the house of Mary, who was the mother of John, whose other name was Mark, where many had gathered and were praying. When he knocked at the outer gate, a maid named Rhoda came to answer. Recognizing Peter's voice, she was so overjoyed that instead of opening the gate, she ran in and announced that Peter was standing at the gate. And they said to her, "You're out of your mind." But she insisted it was so. Meanwhile, Peter continued to knock. And when they opened the gate, they saw him and they were amazed. Free from prison, Peter makes his way alone through the silent streets to the house of a friend. Beyond the closed door on which he knocked, his friends are gathered to pray for him, even though the answer to their prayers is actually just standing on the other side of the door. They experience the knock as an intrusion, and no one opens the door. But Peter continued to knock. He could have shouted and kicked at the door. He could have panicked and fled. He could have second-guessed himself and thought he was at the wrong door. He could have given up and tried somewhere else. But Peter continued to knock. It's easy to quit knocking. Our knuckles get tired. It's easy to give up. It's easy to give in. It's easy to give over. It's hard to keep knocking. And some of us are great sprinters. We're good starters. We've got great energy for the short burst. But so much in life asks us to be marathoners, like Mary Walker, or like Peter, who'd been Simon the fisherman, and like so many others whose names we'll never know. To keep knocking is to persist as we're inspired to do by the witness of the natural world, like salmon, swimming upstream, hurling themselves up the falls, determined to return to the spawning grounds of their birth and their death. Or to be like birds, building a nest for the next generation, twig by tedious twig. Or to be like animals, patiently teaching their young how to survive. Or to be like bamboo, silently and invisibly supporting the life that will come in time by putting so much energy into its roots. To persist despite any evidence of making a difference. When Peter continued to knock, it was his finest hour. When we refuse to give up a vision of wholeness, despite disease and brokenness, we continue to knock. When we refuse to surrender our search for peace, despite the outbreaks of violence, we continue to knock. When we resist the illusions of privilege and security, irrespective of the propaganda of entitlement, we continue to knock. When we persist in discovering that we're never too old to learn something new, we continue to knock. When we insist that there's no peace and justice for us until there's peace and justice for all, we continue to knock. When we seek compassion in a world that seems to take delight in revenge and cruelty, we continue to knock. When we work the problem until we find its opportunity, we continue to knock. In these moments we have together, in this quiet space that music will fill, There's a time for us to consider the long conversation between persistence and impatience, to consider the miracle of staying with, and to ask ourselves where it is that life invites us to continue to knock. Scott Kearns has given us a wonderful song to sing to one another as we hold each other's joys and sorrows, and as we persist in love and in hope. I invite us to offer this, our prayer song this day, as our way of holding one another's joys and sorrows, even though they're not spoken aloud in this community today, but as a way of keeping faith and holding hope with one another. We sing this, our prayer, to each other.
In times of sadness, when life brings fear or pain, seasons of grieving, when loss seems more than gain, in word and deed, may our love surround you. In these our times of need, may love abound. In times of gladness, when life brings happiness, seasons of pleasure, when work has brought success, we celebrate. In our hearts we join you. In these abundant blessings we share the joy. In joy or sorrow, as life brings what it brings, trial or triumph, together we will sing. May love abound as we share our blessings, together our hearts joined, we pray as one.
An invitation for those of you online particularly. We want to invite you to have time with each other to share in conversation. There's an opportunity to gather on Zoom. You'll find the link on our website. Just a time to spend exploring with each other the theme we've been exploring together here today, this theme of persistence. I'm very grateful that we have an opportunity to support the Bissell Center in a very practical and helpful way, and Linda's going to come and tell us a little more about that.
Thank you. I am persistent. My name is Linda May, and I have been a liaison with Bissell for many years. And in the past, we have supported many of their causes. Yearly, we give Christmas gifts, which the parents can come and choose gifts for their children from what we have given. And that has been a real bonus for the people who live in the inner city. Today, I'm asking you for underwear, believe it or not, brand new underwear. And their program is called Drop Your Gaunch. We last did this in 2019, and we had over 500 pairs that I took down on the first day of their launch, the week in July. So this is our hope that we can do as well as that this year. And I understand that some people are still uncomfortable with shopping, but you can, I am willing to do shopping for you if you feel uncomfortable going into the stores, or you can go in. We have a box out in the foyer to gather new underwear for both men and women, because Bissell does serve both. And if you would rather I did it, you can give me some money. I have some, hopefully, sales coming up that people have made me aware of, and we will Look, right now we have 30 pairs of underwear that have already been given and $100 cash that I have to go buy. So think about those people. It is a real sense of dignity to be able to open a new package of underwear. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. And also, among the opportunities we have this year to do some fundraising, we are bringing back from pre-COVID days, our hugest, the sign says, garage sale on the 25th day of June from 9 till 3. We need your help not only to provide us with things to sell, but also to provide us with help. Those of you that are able to volunteer sometime during that week, there's a sign-up sheet just outside these doors of the large hall, outside the childcare room. We would welcome whatever time that you can give us, either during that week or on the sale day in particular. We're still looking for a number of volunteers to help us on the sale day itself. So whatever you're able to do, we welcome that. You can sign up online or on the sheet just outside this room. Thank you for all the ways that you support us. There's also an opportunity this morning to buy grocery cards. Linda's doing a double duty, not only speaking on behalf of Bissell, but she'll be happy to sell you some grocery cards out in the foyer. Also a wonderful way that you can support us. As we make our way to the end of this time that we are in community in this gathered space, we sing again of persistence through the hard times and through the peaceful times. We sing our way in the meantime.
Nothing can guarantee life free of trials. No one will always be free from pain. But when the cold winds blow and the long waves roll and they knock me over again, and I'm laid down low, comes a caring word and an outstretched hand, and I know I'm not alone while I get back on my feet again. Nowhere is peace assured, conflicts will happen, troubles must be endured, problems solved. But when the cold winds blow and the long waves roll and they knock you over again and you're laid down low, comes a caring word and an outstretched hand, and I know you're not alone while you get back on your feet again. And when the cold winds blow and the long waves roll and they knock us over again and we lay down low, comes a caring word and an outstretched hand, and we know we're not alone while we get back on our feet again. While we get back on our feet again.
And what is more persistent than light? Making its way each day, pushing back the darkness over and over again. And we go to bring light to our world, We take the light of our gratitude for those who told us a wonderful story this morning. Our deep gratitude to Pam and Rosemary for dramatizing that story, and for our readers and our characters offering us their voice in storytelling. We go in the spirit of Mary Walker, knowing that we're never too old to learn something new. If we don't give up, impossible things can happen.